Hi everybody, welcome back once again to the Eastfield Gunroom YouTube channel. Today's review is something a little bit different from the norm. Quite often we tend to look at competition, clay style guns on this channel. There's been a lot of requests for game guns. So today we're going to combine looking at a game gun with a model we haven't actually looked at on the channel yet, but it's a massively popular gun. So we're going to look at a 725 Hunter. Now the Browning 725 was launched back 2011-2012. I was actually fortunate enough to go to the UK launch in 2012 at Royal Berkshire Shooting Ground, and it was completely off the wall at the time because Browning are synonymous with this deep-bodied, reliable, very strong action, and what they did is they decided to build something which was a little bit more towards the kind of Beretta style, if you like, and what they did is they slimmed the action down, essentially squashed the 525 to make it a lower profile action, and this was their first foray into doing that. Now, if you've seen the Miracle MK11 video, that is a 725 action with 525 internals, so that gives you an idea of the fact that it's still being manufactured today. Miracle, who are manufactured for Browning, have obviously adopted the fact that they want to use that action as well in their own models, and that brings us on to the 725 Hunter. So 725 was available initially in a sporting and a hunter specification. The sporter, which we'll look at, I'm sure, at some point, was quite different. It got like orange decals on it and crazy checkering. And they also launched a hunter version, which initially was available in 28 and 30-inch barrels. Now, what's quite interesting today is we actually look at a long barrel game. We'll look at a 32-inch. So this gun is a 2016, and like I said, with the launch of the 725, Browning went away from everything they're kind of renowned for in this deeper body frame. They also introduced new choke system, new barrel design. So for Browning, it was kind of the most innovative and progressive thing they'd done for an awful long time because, again, I've said on this channel before, from a shotgun manufacturer's point of view, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that's why a lot of manufacturers now just look at, they change the cosmetics, they look at the board of the barrels, they look at the balance facility. So this was big news for Browning, there's no question. And it was very well received here in the UK. I remember attending a game fair in sort of May-ish 2012 when the guns had just started to land in the UK, and they just sold out instantly. Since then, they've come a long way. You can now get a 20 gauge one. I think you can actually get a 28 gauge over in the States. You know, someone might want to correct me on that. But it's become a firm favorite here in the UK with game shooters and sporting shooters alike. And the gun I've picked today to look at is kind of an interesting one because it sits smack bang in the middle of what we would normally class a grade 1 and a grade 5. Now, this is a grade 3 gun. Historically, Browning used to call these an elite. You'd got the standard grade 1, the grade 3 was the elite, and the grade 5 was always known as the prestige. But it's funny with the grade 3 because what you had to do is you had to make it appealing enough to somebody to want to spend the extra money over what you got in a grade 1, but at the same time there had to be that gap between the grade 5. So for argument's sake, if you look at the woodwork, which we'll come on to shortly, if you got a really poor grade 5, you're better off buying a grade 3, and if you got a really good grade 3, why would you buy a grade 5? And that's the kind of the way it's always been with Brownings. So there's always been this level between different grades. And in the past, they've tried like grade 2s, grade 4s for Miracle back in the 80s. And again, it's very subjective because people have different preferences for engraving, different preferences for wood. And that's why I've chosen this kind of mid-range grade 3. So this gun is a 2016 model and it's called a Hunter. So as you would expect, it's kind of a game version. It's interesting that it's in 32-inch. So if we take it apart and start off with the low profile action I just spoke about, even though it's got this low profile design, it's typically Browning. It looks like a Browning. It's got the kind of the shape of a Browning. Like I said, it looks a bit like it's been squashed in a vice just to make it a little bit lower. Now we've got this kind of grade finish action, which has got, in this instance, we have got some pheasants and we've got some partridges on. Nicely done. And like I said, that's the thing with a grade 3. It's not the very basic grade 1, and it's not the over-the-top in-your-face grade 5 with the really deep scroll work like on the MK38 video we've done. Check that out. So this is kind of a nice halfway house, if you like, a middle ground gun. So you've got a nice enough game scene with some nice scroll work. You've got B725 Hunter G3 on the bottom of there. We've got some nice engraving on the trigger guard itself. So we've got a nice gold trigger here. Obviously, you can see where the barrels lock in, which is the traditional Browning design with the lumps, like I said, the monoblock design. Inside, you've got your full-length bar, which again is a Browning requisite. So it's kind of standard Browning gear, if you like, from all intents and purposes, from an aesthetic point of view. You've got some nicely detailed game scenes that aren't over the top, aren't too elaborate, very subtle with these kind of ploughed fields, etc. It's nicely done. The top lever design, the kind of the checkering bit looks like a crocodile's ear. I'm not a fan of. I think it would have been nicer with maybe some flat checkering or just left plain completely. But again, that's my personal preference. So in terms of the barrel, there was more technology here. Obviously, we'd already got the low profile action. Now, the idea with the low profile action is to improve the balance and the feel between the hands of the shotgun. Now, what Browning coupled that with, so we've got 32-inch tubes with a 6mm narrow game rib, but they came up with this new style overboard barrel when they actually called a Vector Pro. So it was bored 18.7, which is the same as the Invector Plus, which is what the majority of Browning still use today. The 525, for example, Miracle MK38 is another example. And the idea with this is it actually was a tapered 14 cone because Browning believed the boffins over in Japan had told them that that would give them better ballistics in terms of pattern and less shot deformation on the shot from the cartridge. So alongside the 18.7 board and this new Vector Pro system, we've got 3-inch chambers, as you would expect, high performance steel shot proof because it's a modern game gun, if you like, 6mm rib with a squash brass bead on the end or a bit of silver, whatever that is. And this is the exciting bit. Alongside this new barrel design, they came up with a new choke system called an Invector DS. Now, the idea behind that, the DS stood for double seal. And what they did is they actually used, and we'll show you when we go through the little box of tricks, they used a collar on the bottom of the choke. And the idea is that there were slots cut into it and that the gases escaped up the side of the choke. And what that meant was, it meant that obviously you've got a long choke, which coupled with the new barrel profile that give you better ballistics, but also you couldn't get the choke crudded up to the point where it will get stuck in the barrels, which if you're a Browning Miracle owner, you will know that because of the type of steel used in the manufacturing process, it's not uncommon if you don't clean them and look after them to get a choke rusted in. So some clever little bits there to launch this kind of new gun, because let's not forget, if you've got a gun that is even a proven design, you have to keep moving forward, you have to keep changing things. Like I said, at the time, this was huge for Browning. It was a big step to try and see if they could compete with the rest of the guns on the market that offered this low profile action. So this gun weighs £8, literally just under £8. Again, even when you close it and open it, it just feels like a Browning. That's not a bad thing. So in 32-inch, as kind of expected, it's a little bit barrel heavy. Now, if you've watched the MK11, the Miracle MK11 review that we did, it was exactly the same. 725 action, 32-inch, a little bit barrel heavy. So my advice there would be, if you're going to get one of these, you need to look at the balance of it, or maybe just opt for a slightly shorter barrel. And there's other ways to balance it, which we'll move on to shortly. So the next thing that Brown did, which again was completely radical at the time, is they actually put a mechanical trigger system into this gun. So rather than being the standard inertia block operation, which was in the 525, the MK38, pretty much everything Browning Miracle for the last 30, 40 years, they opted for a mechanical trigger system called a firelight trigger mechanism. And the idea behind that is that should you hang on to the trigger accidentally, the second shot will still go off. It increases the lock time and it just makes it, in many people's eyes, for a more faster, efficient trigger pull. You've got to look at the likes of Krieghoff and Blaser that both use mechanical triggers in all of their shotgun designs. Like I said, when we couple that with the new barrel bore and the new chokes, the action profile, which has been reduced, the firelight mechanical trigger, there's a lot going on in this gun. Now, this gun is a manual safety. However, with all Brownings Miracles, when you buy one, usually, or when you acquire one, there is normally an auto safety bar conversion in the box, should you want to convert it to an auto. Typically with a Beretta, you will get auto safety on a game gun as standard. But again, if you want to disable that, that's something that can be done by a skilled gunsmith, no problem whatsoever. So the balance isn't the best. One of the reasons I believe this is, aside from this beautifully figured American walnut, which allegedly is grade 3, you can clearly see it's much nicer than that level of wood. They came up with this recoil pad called an Inflex 2, which they still use on the 525 today. They still use it on most of the 725 models, but the biggest problem is it's very, very lightweight because it's essentially a piece of foam. Now, it's available in different lengths, so it was nice that they'd got a profile pad system because, again, historically Browning have got these god-awful plastic butt plates that kick everybody to pieces. So it was nicely they came up with this recoil pad system, available in a 13, 20 and 25 millimeter lengths, also with spacers, so you could kind of tailor make the length of pull to your requirements, which is, again, is a nice touch. But because it's very, very light, it ultimately affects the balance of the shotgun at the other end. My advice to you, should you want to get hold of one of these nice looking guns, nice feeling guns in 32 inch, put yourself a kickies on the back or a heavier recoil pad, ultimately add a little bit of weight into the stock. At the other end of the barrels, you could put some titanium chokes in, for example. So there are ways, don't just write the gun off completely thinking, oh, Matt says it's heavy in the barrels, because people like long barrel guns and there's things you can do to change the balance accordingly. So bear that in mind. The wood itself, interesting. We've got a half pistol grip stock now. They did a UK model, Hunter UK, specifically for the UK market, which you got a semi-pistol grip stock. By that, I mean a Prince of Wales stock. So it was rounded here, and also coupled with that, they made a slight change to the fore-end design, and that was rounded at the front. Whereas if you look at this fore-end design, it's kind of a Schnabel without the lip. I like it. It feels nice. I think it looks good. I think it suits the gun. I think it makes the gun look refined, and it makes it look expensive, if you like. If you look at some guns, of a lower price point with a Schnabel fore, and they can look a little bit cheap, a little bit tacky. I think just by taking off the sharp edges, if you like, of something like this, it does add for a more refined look, because I think it's in keeping with the rest of the gun and the lines of it. Now, this particular one, not being the UK model, has got a half pistol grip, which for me is a better feel. I think the problem you can have with semi-pistol grip stocks is quite often people's hands are just too big for them, so they're not always suitable, and you can twist the gun, etc. But coupled with that, dimensions wise, we have got 36-56. From my point of view, I think that's a little bit low, but it's certainly a lot higher than some Browning game guns are historically. We won't go all the way back to like Maruk's 6,000, 7,000s, old Browning Citoris, 38-60. Those dimensions are no use to man nor beast, in my opinion. Like I said, the wood itself, absolute knockout. You would struggle to find wood as good as that on probably a grade 5, grade 6 Miracle, which you'll pay a lot of money for. I can understand why the previous owner of this gun chose this gun specifically because of the quality of the woodwork. It does look really good, and I think it also ties in nicely, and it suits the engraving style as well, because I think when you get a kind of a grey finish, I think they are better suited with guns that have got dark wood. This being American walnut, it's got this nutty coloration, this nutty figurine. A bit more about the fore end. You've got the engraving on the fore end catch. The fore end iron is engraving. I'm not entirely sure whether you'd get that on a grade 1. I think it's usually reserved for, like I said, the grade 3s and the grade 5s, etc., or certainly above grade 3. And as a gun, it feels nice, it looks nice, it's going to work. It's a Browning. They are absolutely bulletproof, very, very durable. And now I want to just talk a little bit more about the chokes and the other bits and bobs. I have just spotted though, we've got an eagle's head or something. I mean, I don't think it's a game bird, kind of morphing into some crazy scroll on the top lever, which I actually quite like, because I think that's, again, a bit different, a bit out there. Feel free to have an opinion on yourself and comment below. So, with the grade 3, again, historically, you would get the same kind of case that you got with the grade 1. Browning have really stepped up the game with this one. They've put it in a nice lockable ABS case. So if you did want to go on a plane, or you take it abroad or whatever, or you're going a long journey in the car, just gives you that extra peace of mind in terms of safety that your gun's not going to get bashed to pieces. Now the chokes. So inside this grey Browning choke box, which again is the first Browning I can ever remember to have a choke box with it. They normally used to come, with them in tubes, rattling around in a box. You'll remember the MK11 video that we did with that god-awful choke key. The chokes for that particular gun just supplied in tubes, rattling in the box, and at considerably more money than this. So this is the double seal choke. That's the seal I talked about on the bottom. Personally, one thing I would say is I've shot quite a few 725s with these factory chokes in, and they're not something that have particularly impressed me in terms of the patterns, in the same way that if you watch the Yield It's Pro video, we did that review, which was a shooting review. I pointed out there and then that I wasn't a big fan of the chokes, and personally, if I was to own one of these guns, I would change the chokes to an aftermarket Briley T, etc., because for me, the chokes just don't quite cut it. I'm sure people will have their own opinion if they've got a 725 on the standard DS chokes. If that's not fact, that's just what I feel. Again, feel free to pull me up on it or comment below, no problem at all. So back to the case, we've got a, again, considerably better than MK11 choke key, standard Browning T-bar. These are pretty good, do the job, no problem whatsoever. Put your chokes in and out, happy days. Back in the box, auto safety bar I talked about. Like I said, as standard, all Browning game ones will come with a manual safety if you want to have them converted. Watch a YouTube video or take it to a gunsmith. Back into the box, we have got the obligatory Browning trigger lock that no one ever uses, but everyone seems to get. So there it is. There it is. Proof certificate, which again is a nice touch. We've got the serial number, the length of the barrels, what the gun's been proofed at in terms of the pressure, and also the overall weight of the barrels, which in this case is 1532. That is about right, I would have said, for a 32-inch game gun, which again puts more emphasis on the fact that a bit of a heavier recoil pad, a bit more weight in the stock would just balance it nicely, because it's not that the barrels are too heavy, it's just that the stock is too light. And again, that is just my opinion. So a little proof certificate there, which adds all to the bits. You've got your bits and pieces to tell you how to operate the case and operate the combinations. This one has cleverly been set to 726. Okay, so it did that. And in this envelope, which looks like it's from HMRC, but thankfully it's not because it's not brown, we've got the book of words. And that basically tells you not to point the gun at your friends and how to remove the forend. So that, for the first time on the channel, has been the Browning 725. It is a current model. You can get these in game and sporty specification. They also do a trap version. There's a very popular one on the clay shooting circuit, particularly here in the UK, called the 725 Pro Sport. That's a gun we'll be looking at shortly. A lot of different features on that, but ultimately it's built on the same mandrels as this 725 Hunter. My opinion of this particular gun, it's nice, it looks well, it handles well, it presents well. Just be careful what barrel length you go for, because you might be a little bit disappointed with the balance of a 32 out of the box. However, let's not forget, we go back to the Miracle MK38 Grade 5 video. The density of this American walnut can make all the difference in terms of the weight, because if you'd have got a slightly denser piece of that, it'd have been a bit heavier and it'd balance on the hinge pin. So don't write it off just yet. So that's been the Browning 725 Hunter Grade 3 from me, Matthew Morgan at Eastfield Gunroom. If you've got any questions about this particular gun, please do get in touch. Feel free to comment below. Don't forget to check out the website, and don't forget to keep liking and subscribing the channel, and I'll see you again with another exciting shotgun.